Hey, you believers, non-believers, unaffiliated believers, the growing Western demo now. Sort of believers, and even you think I'm a believers, welcome. My non-university unstudents, welcome to the Uncensored Unprofessor. This is part 5 in my Science-y Stuff series. Today's episode is Creation ex nihilo and Light. And we'll get to that momentarily, but first a reflection. In a just released for patrons only podcast, I both described the new normal for society and then prognosticated where this is headed for the church and individual Christians. And along with that, I offered 4 steps to prepare for the future. How can you get access to that? Sign up for a frankincense or myrrh pledge at Patreon, $10 or $20 per month. And playing off that podcast, I want to think with you for a moment about doublespeak. What is it? What's doublespeak? In his killer prescient book, 1984, George Orwell invented the term doublespeak to show how the powers talk out of both sides of their mouths to indoctrinate people. So, for example, in 1984, Orwell had the government agency, the Ministry of Truth, existing to rewrite all of history to the benefit of the in-time governmental narrative. Ministry of Truth, rewriting history, right? Or the Ministry of Love was a governmental agency that tortured people who opposed the government via their actions or thoughts. Or the Ministry of Peace, again in 1984, was the agency that waged war on other nations. And each of those 3 agencies would issue all kinds of proclamations that were propaganda straight up. The Ministry of Peace would say, "You will all be happy to know we just won a massive battle with Eurasia." But the truth? Their army just got its butt kicked and had to retreat. Everything those agencies said was duplicitous, always stated for the purpose of making the state look better. Doublespeak. Today, we are a flood in doublespeak. And because of the power of giant tech monopolies, the propagandistic brainwashing has never been so prevalent. Right? You have a question about the Center for Disease Control Wu flu numbers? You are therefore a hater.
But I was just wondering what the actual infection rates and mortality rates were.
Social media companies. No! You have no right to ask a question when the government is only looking out for your good. Please refrain from making public posts that involve questions, or we will have to suspend your account. Doublespeak. Or here's the current nadir of doublethink-ism today. Judging people by their skin color is the way to combat racism.
But isn't judging people by their skin color the way to become a racist?
College professors and progressive politicians. How dare you? Dude, that you would even question the narratival facts makes crystal clear your own struggles with closet racism. If you speak like that again in public, you may just lose your federal grant monies. Oh, and sorry to go on, but I do think it is important to understand what we Christ followers are up against. Here's the progressive use of the word science, as in, we are pro-science, and since you have questions about climate change, you obviously do not believe in science.
So do you believe we were all born male or female?
The bougie progressives. You swine! Only a pig science hater would ever pose such a non-scientific question to people like us who live our everyday life grounded in the empirical facts of science. Doublethink. It goes hand in hand with gaslighting. Lies that make you question your own sanity.
The one thing I want as your new president, unity. With all my heart,
unity. Now, please, where was that orange, I mean Oval Office pen? I want to sign an executive order that increases, by a factor of 5, global abortions. Christians, be not naive. Recognize doublespeak for what it is: epistemic violence, manipulation slung around for the sake of power. For 10,000s of years, millions of years, the human race has cooked their buffalo, antelope, their freshly netted king salmon out on the undeveloped hills and plains. And while the jack pine fire popped and the meat simmered in animal fat, they'd look up into the night sky and marvel. So expansive, so replete, awesome in the oldest sense of the word. And like you, my listener, like you and me and billions of folks today, if they can even see the stars, there's so much urban light pollution now. Like you and me, they looked up at that astral symphony and wondered how. How in the name of everything did all of this come to be? There just has to be some explanation for how this all is. And that wonder is universal across all cultures, all global continents. Now, one non-monotheistic explanation was embraced across Earth, and that involved tales of sexual intercourse. And I think this line of thought involves a simple deduction. All of life as we know it comes from something else that was alive. Sunflowers come from sunflower seeds. Largemouth bass come from bass eggs. Mesopotamians are birthed from Mesopotamians. Life from life. And so, they reasoned, there must be gods who had intercourse and birthed the universe. Of course, we would want to ask those ancient peoples, but did you happen to ask yourself from whence the gods themselves came? Did you really solve the problem if you haven't explained the God's own existence? Or another widely embraced deduction went like this: it was just always there. We don't need to ask because it was just always there. Obviously, it's older than us. Maybe it's older than everything. It was just always there. Now, there were different reasons they believed they shouldn't ask. One answer, it's not ours to know. Another answer, it's just too mysterious. Or still another, it doesn't need an explanation, it just is. Now, my listener, that's a hard one for me to swallow. I want to know. I do have questions. But if you study human nature, not all people have questions. I mean, seriously, you can watch our rabidly postmodern world today inebriating its own soul with porn or drugs, millions in mute silence, gulping down the doublespeak of the powers, lapping up the propaganda of the giant media, naively accepting it all without question. So, a big chunk of human nature, of the human race, they just don't ask questions. No, me, the you, I believe good questions lead to good answers. I like finding answers, understanding causation, healing people, caring for what ails them, helping people find solutions to their weighty plights. But a massive chunk of the human race don't ask questions. And they're comfortable. It was just always there. Me? If it was just always there, then why is there meaning? Why is there relationship? Why does the whole human race have a prevalent sense of morality? Nah, it was just always there. Or still another explanation, and it still abides today. Something took pre-existing matter molded it, shaped it, and gave us the universe, or gave us to the universe. But key in that paradigm, the matter had always existed, and it was taken and used by something or someone else. I mean, that's not far off from what the genius Aristotle himself postulated, pre-existing matter. And again, me? Yeah, but where'd the matter come from? Can matter cause itself to be? And where'd the person, where'd the force come from that shaped and molded the matter? Sorry, Aristotle, but I'm afraid you haven't really explained anything. That something existed from eternity does not explain causation. Or worse, none of that establishes meaning or purpose for us today. The Bible, holy schmooly. The Bible presents its own unique explanation for the trillions of stars, suns, up in the night sky.
Hey, Groof, has that buffalo meat cooked enough so that we can cut some chunks up for our stew?
The Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So, in the Bible, there's at least a threefold play on that other line of explanation. The gods caused it. And the play is, A, there's only one God, not many. And then B, part of the play is that all those other supposed gods, sun, moon, mountains, are not, in fact, gods. They are subject to Creator God. And then play C on that other theme, it was not a sexual act. So from the beginning, the Bible is taking other belief systems and correcting them, judging them.
And now, Ed, God tells us not to judge because he himself does not judge.
Actually, you're wrong on both counts. God positively instructs us to judge, not character assassinate, not harp on. And he absolutely judges, both in this life and the one to come. But I can't take time to further unpack that ubiquitous mess. For our concerns in this episode, the Bible immediately reveals the stuff of the universe was created. It didn't pre-exist alongside God. Decidedly, it is not another God. It began. You guys, in classical theological speak, this is known as the doctrine of creation ex nihilo. Class, say creation ex nihilo, please.
Creation ex nihilo. No, Ned, teacher.
Well, that wasn't very good. And that's Latin for creation out of nothing. God created light, heat, energy, gravity, helium, cobalt, nickel, iron, all the stars from what pre-existing thing? No. From no thing. But where did he take it from? Nope. God didn't take it from anywhere, from anything. He made it from nothing. But you may pose, many have, that's not logical. We all know stuff comes from other stuff. True. But the original, the first time, fresh out of the box stuff wasn't. Then it was. It didn't exist, and then suddenly it did. Creation ex nihilo. Proverbs 8:22 through 24 is fairly direct about creation ex nihilo. And a later Jewish book, 2 Maccabees, further illuminates Jewish thinking on the matter. Quote, I beg you, my child, to look at the heaven and the earth and see everything that is in them, and to recognize that God did not make them out of things that existed. 7:28. And in Romans 4:17, the Apostle Paul will echo the Old Testament. God calls into existence the things that do not exist. And look, all that's really not that far-fetched, right? I mean, cosmologists, physicists, scientists of differing stripes For them, the Big Bang is the accepted scientific position regarding the universe's origins. 14 billion years ago, there was a massive explosion from out of an infinitesimally small vacuum, a no thing. And then there was a monstrous flash of light and energy and heat, which over time, you can read theoretical explanations of how fast it spread and how quickly it slowed, cooled to become matter. It cooled and spread out to become the universe as we see it. And by the way, I've referenced his book before, but for a fun, theological, scientific sandwich, an Oreo cookie of an explanation from a scientist who loves theology, go read Gerald Schroeder's book, Genesis and the Big Bang. He'll blow your gourd. Time itself began when that explosion took place. So even scientists believe, most of them, that there was nothing, which is nearly impossible to imagine. Nothing? There was nothing, then there was something. And then followed a process following that enormous explosion to expand, cool, organize, collate, separate, become. Big Bang. Me? The you? I have no problem believing in the Big Bang. God spoke, and bang! The universe came into being. Creation ex nihilo. Creation from nothing. Nothing but the mind, word, breath of God. The upper hand that theology, or in more simple terms, the Bible, has over science? Theology, the Bible, can say both what caused the Big Bang and why. Scientists can neither explain the cause of the Big Bang, first, that there were many prior Big Bangs, some say that, for which there is no empirical proof, or second, a super duper trooper pooper looper miracle of a nothing, absolutely nothing, to recall the lyrics from a Lemon Jelly song I've heard dozens of times, absolutely nothing miraculously produced the universe as we know it. And I think either of those, that there were many prior Big Bangs or a nothing did this, that takes faith. Way more faith than to posit that a hypergenius being made the universe, made light and radiation and gravity and molten energy, which cooled and separated and sorted to become the universe with its millions of galaxies as we have it. The Bible says there was a God who did it all. Beautiful. Causation. Caused things had to have had a cause. Causes don't have uncauses. Design things have designers. Designers design to an end. Things in motion were put in motion by something else. Things in motion all across life don't cause, not ultimately, don't cause themselves to move. They are moved. Causation, design, theology says, all spilling forth from a being, an entity we adoringly address, God, Lord, Savior, Christ. So, something, the universe, from nothing, spoken by a designing being, God. Why? Why? Well, at least for love, not for necessity. Nothing forced God to create. It was a free act of love. Love shares. Love allows things to exist as naked things with free play for their own ends. Love shares. Love is ecstatic, giving, opening, receiving, delighting, laughing, singing, outgoing. The universe, then, is a song written by God Himself, a designed symphony, full of purpose and meaning, but only for those who have eyes to see it. Can you, my listener, can you see it? Isn't it grand? Its beauty fills me with hope. But then, real quick, if we're being logical, what of God's own causation? And theology says he cannot have had a cause. Now, I know, hang on. First, logic says he cannot have had a cause or else he is not God. If he himself was caused, he is a creature, not God. He can't have had a cause. And then, second, theology says if he is caused, he is not omnipotent. So, happily, both logic and theology echo the Bible, God's self-revelation on the matter. And as I think of it, I suppose the classic text on this, Exodus 3:14, is God speaking out of a burning bush to Moses saying, I am who I am. And that is called aseity. Class, please say aseity. Aseity, teacher. God causes himself. Or God has no cause. Or he is faithful because he is. There is no prior. There's no term that perfectly circumscribes God other than God. And in all of this, the Christian way is not first a way of utility. We don't first worship Christ because of his gifts. We worship him because he is. He is the prior, the ground, the core. All of life, even my purpose, my hopes, all of life is centered in his existence, his being, his love. And I think that is a gorgeous way to understand the universe versus it was an accident, a cosmic fart. That doesn't amount to much meaning or purpose or beauty. So there's some creation ex nihilo. What about light? Well, I'll shine a light on light in a moment. First, some thanks are due. For every one of you who pray for me, my heartfelt thanks. For my monthly subscribers, oh, thank you, thank you. Your gifts are strength to my soul. For those of you who have subscribed at YouTube, gracias. All you who have signed up for the UUE newsletter at uncensoredunprofessor.com, so glad to have you on the team. And then for recent Facebook shares, I have some props. Colleen S., Cody A., Angela W., Daniel F., Bobby J.V., Scott P., and Tanya R. Sweetie, my dear thanks. My heart is filled with gratitude to have so many helping me build this podcast. Light. We need light. My mom and her husband Mike lived in Bremerton, Washington for 14 years. That's across the Sound to the west from Seattle. The lack of light there drove my mom into a deep depression. She said that the locals knew that a, air quotes, nice day was when it didn't rain, but the gray, cloudy overcast was a constant. And really, it's no wonder that Seattle has a high suicide rate. We need light. One of the most absurd things of our government's COVID narrative has been to force people to stay home, close beaches, close the parks. In April, Spudlandia watched in horror as the police in Meridian arrested a mom whose kids were playing at a yellow taped-off playground. It's been crazy to watch the forbidding of exercise out on public trails. Strong immune systems are good for combating the Wu flu. Vitamin D is good for our immune systems. Vitamin D comes from sunlight. Like I say, the government's mishandling of Rona is so counterintuitive. Quarantine the healthy? That I'm frequently beside myself. We need light. And of course, that begs the question, just what is light.
Less fatty?
Wrong kind of light. Light is energy, unique energy. First, light is comprised of photons. A photon is a discrete particle of light, also known as the smallest visible particle of light. No, Joe, a photon cannot be split. But are you sitting down? Photons do not have mass. Did I say light is energy that's unique? Oh man. Second, light is the visible to us part of the electromagnetic spectrum at work in the universe. Or to put it into some perspective, light is about the size of a bacterium. Oh, and for your information, most of the electromagnetic spectrum is invisible to the human eye. Third, light, from the instant of its origin, the sun, a candle, a blue light special at Kmart. Light travels at its top and only speed, 670,616,629 miles per hour. And no, Jerry, scientists do not know why light travels at the speed it does. It just does. And that speed, 670,616,629 miles per hour, ascertained in its most updated measure by laser experiments conducted in 1972 in Boulder, Colorado, that speed means it only takes 8 minutes for light to traverse the 93 million miles from the sun to Earth. Crazy. And I think that's interesting because we're not really seeing the sun as it is. We're seeing the sun as it was 8 minutes ago. Or back to speed, it only takes the sun's light 1.2 seconds to bounce off Earth's face and reach the moon. Or, again, for still more perspective, traveling at the speed of light, you would be able to circle Earth 7.5 times in 1 second. Now, fourth, and further exhibiting the magic, the miraculous nature of our universe, light is both a particle and a wave. Weird, right? Now, you can think of a particle as a golf ball. A Titleist Pro V1, fresh from the sleeve. Just firm enough to travel the maximum allowable distance per the PGA standards, but with a core soft enough to bite the green upon landing. Oh, what a bit of magic all that is. A baby draw that lands and shoots forward. Sorry, I lost myself there imagining golf stuff. But imagine a particle as a minuscule golf ball. But at the same time, light is a wave. The entire electromagnetic spectrum is comprised of waves. Or to mess you up further, because it messed me up good, light particles are always waves, not objects. This is mysterious stuff. Again, light is a wave. To imagine a wave, imagine an ocean wave. There. Did that help? Analogies, oh analogies. Let me note just a few, okay? He was as tall as a 6'4" tree. The ballerina rose gracefully on point and extended one slender leg behind her, like a dog at a fire hydrant. Her eyes were like the stars, not because they twinkled, but because they were so far apart.
I heard that.
She had a deep, throaty, genuine laugh, like the sound a dog makes before it throws up. The revelation that his marriage of 30 years had disintegrated because of his wife's infidelity came as a rude shock, like a surcharge at a formerly surcharge-free ATM. Analogies, oh analogies. My point today, light is both a particle and a wave. In history, Isaac Newton, who died in 1727, he first postulated that light is a particle. Particles have a specific shape, size, and location. And then later, Thomas Young, who died about a century later, said that light travels in waves. And across the next couple hundreds of years, all kinds of scientists, including Albert Einstein, conducted experiments to see whether light was a particle or a wave. Answer: both. Mysterious, magical, magic. As a particle, light can both reflect and refract, but not interfere with itself or display polarization. While as a wave, also known as a disturbance in a pre-existing field, as a wave, light can variously reflect, refract, interfere with itself, display diffraction, bend around an object and spread out, and exhibit polarization, how light waves move in relation to one another. But waves do not work in the photoelectric effect. Now, honestly, I read several quick definitions of this, and if I tried to explain it, I'd probably just embarrass myself and confuse you. But light is both a particle and a wave. And again, hugely significant for both science and the philosophy of science. Light can be viewed as a particle or a wave depending upon how it's observed. And that phrase, depending on how it's observed, is known today as the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Is light a wave or a particle? Well, that's uncertain. It depends how one observes the light. So, what does it mean that light can be observed as a particle or a wave? Well, especially in the last 20 years, it has helped to foster perspectives outside of science itself. Especially pertinent for a theology podcast, light studies, particle or wave, have fostered what is known as moral relativism. After all, if in the arena of hard science the reality of light can shift depending upon observance, then doesn't that mean all reality is finally and only relative? If we cannot ascertain whether light is a wave or a particle, how can we possibly ascertain whether cutting off a little girl's breasts and pumping her full of testosterone and then calling her a boy is moral or not? Who's to say? Man, this is a topic again that could be an entire series. So let me cut to the chase here and note a couple pertinent fallacies. That light is either a particle or a wave in no way denies the existence of light. Those who manipulate the study of light to develop an entire chaotic system of morality, also known as moral relativism, are intentionally bending the rules. For instance, there are no sane scientists who deny the existence of light. They all recognize that it is mysterious stuff, magical energy, mind-blowing electromagnetic stuff. But no one denies that light is real. Philosophers, are they anti-philosophers? Philosophers who use light's nature as an argument for moral relativism are betraying their own agenda. They're taking a nuanced observation in science and applying it to their own ends. Conversely, and by the same manner, in saying light is either a particle or a wave, one could argue that no matter how you study it, the absolute nature of light is always apparent. No matter how it's studied, it is always still light. And if you took that and extended it, you could argue that morality is still always moral. Right or wrong, it's always a moral question. Or goodness, the absolute and never-changing speed of light, 670,616,629 miles per hour, no matter what, could be argued as the basis for an ethical code that is itself absolute, with no shades of gray, only black and white, only existence of moral absolutes. So those who use light as a ground for moral relativism are exercising a dodge or a betrayal of their own a priori commitments. Second critique, and it's on the same front. Suggesting that light's nature is somehow a groundbreaking insight to, in turn, strongly argue for moral relativism is to deny the history of philosophy, which already had its arguments for moral relativism. Right? Heraclitus, who was born in 544 BC, said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." That's a classic philosophic statement to argue for moral relativism. But then we would say, well, what did Heraclitus mean by that? Because, honestly, it was a subset of his larger worldview, which argued that all of reality was mysteriously held together, unified and one by virtue of logos, reason, which honestly is a ground hardly suited for a rank moral relativism. Heraclitus, the writer who first coined the word cosmos, world order, would never have denied that a man was always a man or a river was always a river, even though those, as particulars, can change. But for a moral relativist, it doesn't matter what Heraclitus actually meant. The moral relativist simply takes those words and uses them to argue, after all, the river is always changing and the man is always changing, so there are no ethical absolutes. It's disingenuous. That studies of light, and with it Einstein's theory of relativity, were used to strenuously argue for moral relativism, all of that was the result of 20th century modernism and now postmodernism. But Einstein was not a moral relativist. Albert Mohler wrote, quote, "Einstein was not a moral relativist, nor did he believe that his theories had any essential moral or cultural meaning. He recoiled when his theory of relativity was blamed or credited for the birth of modern art, Cubism in particular, or any other cultural development. The philosopher Isaiah Berlin defended Einstein against any such charge, saying, 'The word relativity has been widely misinterpreted as relativism, the denial or doubt about the objectivity of truth or moral values.'" And Mohler continued, "This was the opposite of what Einstein believed. He was a man of simple and absolute moral convictions, which were expressed in all he was and did." End quote. Einstein's theory got used. So what's going on here, you guys? Not only is moral relativism not science, science is not ethics. Oh, you guys, this is important. If you're not sitting down, this is worth pausing for. Science is ethical. It's not against ethics, but neither is it for ethics. It's ethical. Science is an enterprise that sits outside of ethical considerations, because the job of science is to understand, describe, measure what is there. Science has no qualifications for saying whether the thing, the subject that it is studying, is morally good or bad. Science has no tools for measuring good or evil. And so, those scientists, upon rare occasion, or philosophers, more frequently, or humanities professors, the more likely culprits, those who argue that light is a basis for moral relativism, they're not only being non-scientific, they're being disingenuous. Oh well, The heart, Emily Dickinson wrote, the heart wants what the heart wants. No? Well, I hope you found that edifying and interesting. I was fascinated to learn more about light. You guys, I'm so pleased to have you with me. Thank you for thinking carefully with me. And please go now and turn your beautiful God-given brains on, everybody.